All right, grab those Bibles. Wrong way. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Well, since it is Super Bowl Sunday, I will do something I never do, which is watch the time. But also, there we go, because we're going to do some fun things, I hope, today. Hopefully everything goes smoothly. I want to start off by welcoming everybody. We are super glad that you're here. And we hope that this is not the only time that you join us. Hopefully this is one of many. And we're very much glad and blessed to have you with us. I will address the elephant in the room. This is not a normal pulpit. This is actually a workbench that I built at great instruction by a mentor who's going to join me here in a little bit on stage. We have been talking about having our life under construction, right? And I've mentioned that the manly decoration and the lack of feminine decor that we've kind of installed around helps to remind us of the fact that our life gets a little upended when we are working on creating something different in our lives, right? Making change is not clean. Making change is not simple. Change brings with it challenges, right? And I think we've seen that as we've looked at the different elements of adding to our faith out of 2 Peter that we're going to be continuing to look at this morning. But it's important that we make space in our life to do that work. A workbench is essential to the craftsman. Whether he be doing metal work or leather work or woodwork, he needs a space, she needs a space to work. Now, it depends upon the needs one has, what kind of workbench one will build. This is very much probably one of a kind. You probably have never seen one exactly like this. I know several of you thought it was our kitchen table. I think it's pretty, but it's not. It's workbench, right? But, if you're going to be working with metal, you don't want to have wood because you're going to start fires, right? If you have to meet the need. But there's a universal truth here when we think about workbenches. You need a space to work. You need a space to do things. You got to make that space in your life. And here's the thing I've learned in my shop over and over again. No matter how many times I make a New Year's resolution that I'm going to keep the bench clear. It's a flat surface and it collects things, just like your countertops, just like the tops of your nightstands and your dresser and everything else. And then you can't work. And it's essential in our life. And this is just for free. This doesn't have anything to do with the lesson. This is just preacher's spiritual tip of the day. You have to make space in your life to do work. You have to clear it off. You have to keep it clean. You have to constantly work to do that. And I think that is something that is seen in just the practicality of a workbench. So hopefully you'll bear with me today as we kind of look at that. Now, let's get into the text here. All right. See, I even had a slide for it and I forgot. All right. 2 Peter chapter 1, starting in verse 5. You got to know it well by now. For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and with steadfastness, godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if you have these qualities in you, are ever increasing, they keep you from being inefficient, unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. So we've been going through these different elements, these 7 qualities that Peter says we need to add to our life. And he is encouraging with great emphasis that we need to be adding these things to our life. So we've gone through them slowly. The concept of virtue, right? We do these things diligently, right? That's the modifier to all of these. We do this diligently. There's intentionality. There is effort that's behind it. We add to our faith, not because it's not sufficient, not because it's not enough, but because our faith is not stagnant. It needs to act. It must act. So we add to our faith with virtue, and virtue is just the good qualities of a good citizen. But Peter is using that in the sense of who Christ is, of the values of the kingdom. So add to your faith the virtues of the kingdom, the qualities that are held in high regard within the kingdom of God. He says, I want you to then add to that faith, add to that virtue knowledge, because you have to know what that virtue is, right? That's very nondescript, so you add knowledge. But knowledge only puffs up. You have to have that transform you. It has to produce action. Right? Which leads to his next one, self-control. You have to control yourself. You have to be guiding yourself. You can't just say, oh, the devil made me do it. You can't just say, oh, I was tired. Right? You have to be in control of you. And it goes back to, as we consider the controlling of oneself and putting these things into action, that we have to be steadfast. We have to be steadfast. Because as we endure, as we persist, even when we fail, we're learning, we're growing, we're maturing. And that's the goal, is that maturing. Now we come to the one we're going to look at today, which is godliness. Now what is godliness? What is godliness? Godliness, in some of your Bibles, is the fear of God. Others might use the word piety, and both of those words are good. That really does get at what the Greek is saying here. But that's not necessarily very descriptive. What does it mean to fear the Lord? What does it mean to be pious? Right? Am I supposed to be walking around in, a seven-piece suit and have my hands folded and walk around and just be a monk all the time? Or like what does it mean to have piety? What does it mean to be godly? Right? They're still not necessarily descriptive words, and it really is similar to what we talked about with virtue. Right? It's an open concept that Peter and the rest of the disciples are defining for us. They're defining it for us. See, we are made in the image and the likeness of God. And as image bearers of God, we need to proclaim who He is, His God-like qualities. There's a number of different qualities one could look at and consider when they're wondering what one's... that is last week's lesson. There we go. See? First time to look at my notes. All right. I messaged Ryan. I'm like, okay, let's define godliness. And here's some of the qualities of godliness. And once again, we're left with this long list. And it's like, okay, but how do I live that out? Right? But fairness, forgiving others, compassion, patience, sound judgment, knowledge, wisdom, love, not showing partiality, fair in one's actions, faithful, dependable, being helpful, a giver of good gifts, demanding high expectations, being a friend, demanding justice, and bringing things into order. These are all qualities of God, and we could look at any number of the different elements and the qualities of who God is to define godliness. I spent an entire year, and some people's eyes get real wide and they get worried because they're afraid I'm going to do it again, but a whole year on the names of God, because they're defining and showing us who He is, these different elements, these different aspects, and how He interacts with people. So this is a vast topic. That's my point. So how do we define, how do we live out? Because that's one of the questions that's been asked, is how do we do this? Right? You're engaging in your sermons, the decor is less to be desired, but we'll put up with it. But how do we do it? Listen to what John says, or what Jesus says in John chapter 4. Philip says to him, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. Just show us God, Jesus. And Jesus said to him, have I been with you so long that you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Do you not believe that I am the Father and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you do not speak of my own authority, but of the Father who dwells and works in me. Believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or at least believe on account of the works themselves. So what does Jesus say? Jesus says, if you want to know God, you have to know me. So one way we can define, and it's what we've sung about this entire morning, If you want to know what godliness is, you look at Christ. It's why we spent an entire year last year looking at who Jesus is. That's that gaining and that growing in knowledge. But still, we want to put these things into action. So I'm going to invite my friend up here, Ryan Davis, and while he comes up, I want to introduce him to you. I met Ryan in 2009, thanks to a mutual friend. I was looking at going into ministry. I was into woodworking, and Ryan was willing to take me under his wing for an afternoon after church and to talk to me about my future. And I still remember him looking at me and telling me, and we've talked about it multiple times, though he remembers it slightly different than I do, that I could go to school at 19, graduate from preaching college in 2 years, I could be the best preacher in the world, and no one would hire me. He's like, don't go to Bear Valley, don't go to Sunset, go to AIM, get some experience, learn how to live out the Christian life, meet somebody, go to Sunset, get an education, and then you'll be hireable. And he was right. He was right. And and I was grateful to have that advice. I followed that advice, and I stand before you today in great part because of God putting this man in my life. So I'm grateful to him. He introduced me to hand tool woodworking. I knew how to do the power stuff out of the wood shop in school, and he quickly dressed me down and showed me that I didn't know nothing about wood. And I have since learned much at his tutelage. So this, in many ways, is my master in not only the faith, but in woodworking, and I appreciate him greatly. So, Ryan, what I want us to do this morning as we gather around this bench you helped me design and then I built, is to kind of do what we did that very first Sunday we met. We want to gather around the bench and we want to ask the question that's been asked to me: how do we live out godliness?
You know, living out godliness, you know, we've looked at the words, we've looked at the actions that are imparted in those words. I apologize for this. Put it on my tie here.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit hoarse this morning. I am not used to the weather here. I'm not used to humidity. We're way up on the plains, and this is quite a bit different for me.
This is.
One of the things about godliness is I've been involved in no fewer than 6 ministers going to school. I think I had more direct influence on Michael than most. But, you know, it was at a bench like this one that we went out to the shop and we started talking. And when we were talking, you know, of course, I had to dash some dreams, because when you're young, you want to go out and you want to conquer the world. You think that you have it all together, kind of like being a master woodworker at 19. Bless his heart. You know, I've been doing woodworking since, you know, I was a little kid. And, you know, I went through a formal apprenticeship. I had masters that I was under. I've done some really remarkable work in my career. I'm a diesel locomotive mechanic now. The long story how we got there. We're not going to go into that. But the fact is that the woodworking played a big role in our friendship. And it was a good place to start. And when we're looking at Jesus' life, and when we're looking at each other, where do we start? Okay? I didn't know Michael from anybody, and I was afraid I was going to completely devastate him and that he would quit altogether, and that was not my plan. My plan was to help him grow in faith. How do you do that with a 19-year-old kid? You have to give him gentle guidance, lay out a plan, just like my masters in the woodworking did before me. Mm-hmm. They said, here's your plan, work the plan. Yep. That's what I did for Michael. And really, that's part of just godly living. Yep. Okay? You see people around you that need a helping hand. Mm-hmm. You give them the mentorship. You give them the information. But some of the things that Michael and I have discussed over the years is not just about godliness, but about Christian living, how to teach the Bible. Sometimes we go in and we really nerd out. He'll call me up for a Greek word, and I'll give him a whole...
Yeah, this is my Greek word study. When I get stumped, Ryan's my first phone call. He's very
thorough.
humble about the fact that he doesn't know Greek, but he's the only one I've ever known who carries a Greek New Testament to church and reads out of it while the preacher's preaching. So, you know your stuff fairly well. You've sat at the feet of some great teachers over the years and learned some of those skills. So we wrestle with the text, right? Because in there we can gain knowledge, but we have to bring that knowledge to application. And I think that's where the bench top really comes in, because we have to get practical about how we actually live it out. And my poor wife, so often I will tell her my sermon, and she's all right, Michael, that's great. What are you going to do with it? What do you want them to walk away with? And I'm like, I don't know, Michael studied great. That's what I want you. Bible's awesome. Yay, Jesus. And she's like, yeah, that is a research paper. That is not a sermon.
How do you get people to dig deeper?
Yeah.
Is one of the things that we have struggled with as preachers. I'm not a full-time preacher. I went to Sunset, and I did very poorly. I was a poor student. Nonetheless, I took what I was given, and I started just trying to take it and put some application behind it. That was one of the things that we often did. I heard it so much from Ed Wharton. What's your application?
Right.
How are you going to apply this? How are you going to make this work? I look at this bench right here and I go, Michael says, I want to build a bench. I said, okay. What do you need? He says, well, I don't know, I need a bench.
Got to have somewhere to work.
Got to have somewhere to work. And it's like, well, what are your specifications? I don't know. I've got to be able to work. Because, that's what you think. I'm going to get to work. As a preacher, you think, I'm going to get to work. How? What tools are you using? What is the application here? What are you going to be building? How are you going to do it?
Right.
This bench is a prime example of just that, and I feel honored here to be able to stand opposite with him again after 17 years, where he was at my bench and now I'm at his. The big thing for this takeaway is he says, I need a plan. It's like, okay, you need a plan. What do you need it to do? So we listed out things that it needed to do for him. It had to be mobile in an SUV or a minivan. This bench, as solid as it is, I could get up here and I could jump up and down on it. We can disassemble it and put it in the back seat of a car. That's a fact. Okay? It's able to be on any surface. It's actually a tri-stand. It has 3 points of contact. So it's designed for a preacher's life, where he can move it where it needs to be. This is part of the plan. But when we're talking, we often think, what do the people need to hear? And over the past few years, I've been in a lot of different congregations in the last 17 years. I've been in Florida, I've been in Kansas, I've been in Indiana, back in Texas again. One of the things that I often don't hear from the pulpit, which I'm glad that you have him, because he does do this, I want to hear about Jesus. Okay, so this is kind of one of those things that I asked you all. What's your favorite story of Jesus? This is open session. Come on. Yell it out.
When he walked on water.
Walking on water. Excellent one.
Okay. Sermon on the Mount.
Another excellent one.
The raising of Lazarus. Okay. Recruiting the apostles.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing stuff, isn't it? You like to hear about these stories. Do you ever get tired of it? Do you read it over and over again? I know I've read this over and over again. There are things that I love. Some of the things that I love is in Matthew chapter 19, verse 13 and following. It says, "Then some children were brought to him that he might lay his hands on them and pray, and the disciples rebuked them." Get these. Forgive me, ladies, gentlemen, kids. I'm not a little kid person. Okay?
Selah wanted to climb up in his lap yesterday with muddy hands.
Yeah, and I'm like, easy there. Okay. I have a son. His name is Lynx. He's sitting here in the front row. Now he's looking at me all paranoid. And I had some hard lessons to learn about kids, not only when he came along, but the fact that I helped raise most of my nieces. Okay? That was hard. Before that, I was in AIM like Michael was. And the first place they put me, because I said I didn't want to work with kids, guess what they did?
Children's ministry. Where else?
Children's ministry. Ryan's it. Great. I learned tons of things about dealing with little kids. I still don't like it all that much. Okay? But I understand it better. And I understand how little kids think and what their needs are. So when Jesus says, he says in verse 14, "But Jesus said, 'Let the little children alone and do not hinder them from coming to me, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such
as these.'"
It's hard to finish that. These little kids with their dirty hands. All up in the mud.
You can control them. They just do exactly what you tell them all the time. Never messy.
Mine was. Mine was a clean freak. I blame his mom for that. No, actually, that's my fault too.
But you bring up a good point. The fact of the matter is, living this out involves getting messy. It's in person. It's not controlled. And I think that's the thing we struggle with. We look at these stories, we read these stories over and over again, and we're like, okay, what's the application? And there's principles in here. It tells us the qualities and the values of the kingdom. It doesn't tell you the point by point plan, right? And
right.
Kids, if anything, will teach you that there's not a point by point plan. You have to roll with it, especially when you have two sets of twins. It's just life, right? They're not easily controlled.
I was working in Indiana. I was at a steel mill working on rewiring a locomotive, and Michael calls me up. He says, "Guess what? We're pregnant." He says, "And I seem to be doubly blessed." It's like, twins. I laughed all day.
He's still laughing.
I'm still laughing. He called me up again. Guess what I was doing that time too?
Same thing.
Rewiring another locomotive at the same steel mill.
No more of that.
No.
No more wiring.
No more of that. But I laugh. And he does such a great job with his kids. I'm so impressed. But when we're dealing with each other, we need to deal with each other sometimes as if you're a child. I'm looking at you in the face. I need to look at you as a child because you may not know the things that I know. Mm-hmm. And then again, I need to be that child too. It's like, I need to be able to receive criticism as well.
Right. Well, and there's so many elements of childhood, and we have been talking for the last couple of weeks about this idea and what we're going to talk about, and we have so much more we want to share, and we are running out of time.
Yes.
Which is one of the problems. We've spent most of our time on the phone, not in person. And phone calls between us is an hour to 2 hours long, very much to my wife's chagrin. So, but when we think about these qualities of a child, right, often many of those qualities are what we talked about in 2024 about the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes, right? So much of the qualities of the kingdom, the humility of a child, right? That humbleness of a child, that true belief, that desire for what they want, right? Try to keep a toddler from the cookie they want and they've seen, right? I mean, they hunger and thirst after it, right? They just desire it.
Body training and a toy. That you have that goal, that toy goal, and they're potty training, but they want it now. Got it. Yeah.
So blessed are the poor in spirit, right? For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who are hungering and thirsting after righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Right? So when we think about all those different qualities, it's a upside down way of looking at the world. The world says we have to do this with force and with power and with status. That's not the way children operate, is it?
No.
Right? And we see this again and again and again with Jesus. He operates in a completely upside down kingdom mindset. And I think really the challenge that we have in trying to say, okay, how do we live this out? What does it look like to live out godliness? I think the challenge of that is it depends on the individual, right? This bench was designed by me and Ryan to fit the needs that I had. Somebody else would need to design a different bench to fit their needs. Right? This is not the bench for all people.
My bench looks so much different. As a matter of fact, I have a child drew this picture. I don't know if you want to see it. It's me at my bench. My son drew this many years ago. And when you take a look at it, my bench is on wheels. And because I need to be able to be mobile because of the type of work that I do. I know, I'm not sure exactly where I was going to go with that, but...
Well, yeah, but I mean, when we think about the differenceness, right? So we're all going to have to live this out in a different way.
Yes.
Right? There's no one size fits all. Do this, do that. Like, this is your plan in life. Like, and even amongst the plan that Ryan laid out for me around his workbench years ago, there were setbacks and pivots and changes and unknowns that I had to navigate, right? And figure out. And it's not as clean and clear as it was laid out. But I had an overview of what it looked like to actually be able to carry it out. And I think that's what the life of Jesus really gives us, is he gives us that example to follow. Right? He's showing us what it's like. And I think that's where discipleship within the church is one of those big things. We need each other. We need to walk with one another. We need to rub elbows with one another.
When we get down in here to verse 31 in Luke chapter 6, verse 31, this is part of the Sermon on the Mount. I call this the royal law. Does anybody know where the royal law comes from?
James.
James chapter what?
2.
Okay, verse 8. Lord's brother says that to love your brother as yourself is the royal law. I grew up in a very fractured family. My family life was not great growing up. I grew up with one foot inside the church and one foot outside the church. What do you think somebody like me needs? He's watching my time. We need this royal law. I need patience and kindness. We need to love one another. Okay? Who's the hardest person to love?
Myself.
More often than not, it's yourself. Sometimes it's hard to love that guy that's walking along the highway with his dog in the rain.
You love dogs, by the way.
Oh yeah, I love dogs. Dogs are a step below little kids. I apologize. I know many of you are dog lovers, and you're looking at me like, how dare you? I'm a cat guy. That's okay. Everybody has their poison, I suppose. But you're driving along and you see this guy, walking along the highway in the rain with his dog, and you stop and you pick him up anyway.
Wet dog is wonderful.
Oh yeah. You know what? That dog was great. I love that dog. Because he curled up on my back mat on my new car, okay, and didn't make any mess and looked at me like, thank you. Ends up that the man that I stopped to pick up was a member of the church. I was going to pass him up. Matter of fact, I did. I went back. I'm blessed for that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I think we often undervalue those kind of things.
Yes.
Right? We make Christianity about the minister who gets up and delivers that perfect lesson, right? We make it about making sure the songs are on pitch. We make it about the aura of the worship hall. But this is for our benefit. This isn't the Christian life. Right? The Christian life is how do we live it out. One of the things that my wife is constantly telling me, and it's one of the reasons I married her, is our family is our ministry. Right? I got to raise those kids to know the Lord. Like, that is my first ministry, and none of you guys are equipped or in the position to do that, so I'm the only one, along with my wife, who gets to do that. Right? I have a responsibility there. Right? We all have our areas of responsibility. Right? So don't make this about the big show, because it's not about a big show. Right? It's stopping to pick up somebody on the side of the road, right, to show the love of Christ, or maybe even to show the love of Christ to a brother.
Well,
right?
The fact is, I thought I was going to be the one that was going to give some mercy. No. It was me that received.
Yeah.
I'm glad for that. When we look around, we think, oh, I've got this together. The older you get in Christ, the more you know you don't have it all together. The more you know about your Bible, you know that you don't know. Mm-hmm. You know less than what you did before. And it reminds me of some of the things that Jesus, with people that he dealt with. In Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 29. I'm not going to go through all this. It says, and behold, a certain lawyer stood up and put him to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus said, what is written in the law? How does it read to you?
Have you gained knowledge?
Okay. You can have all the knowledge of the Bible and never act on it. Never act on it. I've got hundreds of magazines and books about woodworking at home. I love woodworking. Okay? I've got nearly as much in engineering and railroad related stuff, which I don't love nearly as much. It's just my job. The whole point is that I can read about that all day long, and until I go and I pick up a tool and I put a plank on the bench, I know nothing.
Yep.
Because how did you feel the first time that I handed you a hand plane and said, make a shaving?
Huh.
You're like, what?
What? What's a shaving?
Yeah.
We make chips.
So, taught him footwork, taught him how to get his body into it. Okay? What I'm saying is, with Christ, with Christianity, I want to hear about Jesus because Jesus is the master that's teaching us the footwork and operating that hand plane that is the Christian life. You know, and Michael and I have talked at length about woodworking and the Bible together. You think they don't have a whole lot in common, but I beg to differ because we've spent how many hours?
Too many, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Every so often I steal Michael on the phone, and Alyssa gets upset with me, and I apologize, and you are ever so patient, and thank you, because it's a blessing to me. But this young man, this young lawyer, he comes and he's like, how does it read to you? And he answered and said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind and your neighbor as yourself. Do you all love your neighbors? You nod yes. Do your neighbors ever annoy you?
Oh, no, never.
Never.
I annoy my neighbors, but my neighbors don't annoy me.
What about your coworkers or your family? Well, I saw that. I love my coworkers. Where I work, I have the best coworkers in the world. Okay? Honestly, because they are so forgiving of me. I wish Kevin could hear this right now because he needed to hear that because he and I have been working together for 18 years, off and on. And we're not often kind to each other. You know, because when you're doing something and it requires, you know, when people's safety, you're not nice. You have to order each other around. And you have to yell at them. And sometimes it's like, hey, quit being stupid. And then you go back and say, I'm sorry. And he's like, no, you're right. You're forgiven already. And you know what's funny about that term is that's a term that I learned in a marriage seminar when my wife and I were first married. And now he's using it on me. So I work with great guys. My boss is great. My coworkers are great. But you know what? We have to learn to forgive one another. With your spouse, again, you know, you're with each other all the time. You're going to...
You never annoy each other.
What's that?
You never annoy each other because you're...
Oh, no. Does he ever annoy you? Never. Part of it is loving your neighbor as yourself means that you're going to have to forgive them every once in a while. Brady, who's now my boss, he was my apprentice, now he's my boss, and I'm so happy about that. But Brady, he uses that term now too. He says, you're forgiven already. And that's a key part. Loving your neighbor as yourself means that you take them for who they are, where they are, with what they're doing. This reminds me of some of the things that Paul had to say, and I know that we're running out of time, and I don't know when that ending time is.
We're past that time.
We're past that time.
Like we always are.
Like we always are. I apologize, because I know that many of you are trying to get to the game. So we're going to wrap this up, Lord willing. We need to forgive and love as Christ loved. How did he do that? I want to ask us one last question. How did Jesus love? How does Jesus love you?
To the end.
He died? Unconditionally? Agape? With what?
Whole heart.
Whole heart? He doesn't judge you? Okay.
Compassion.
Compassion. Compassion is a great word. It means to have one's guts twisted up in knots. It comes from the Greek word splunk-knot. It's a crazy word. But it literally means it's down deep, where you're going to feel it. So how else did God, how did Christ love us? Already.
Before the foundation of the world.
From the very beginning, Jesus loved us. Not because we were lawful, not because we were honest, not because we were good, not because we had clean hands. He loved us like the little child. Come on up here. I'm going to have to get over myself, aren't I? This is God's love. And so often in our country, we think we're the greatest country in the world. We think we have it together. We know how to do this thing.
Until we don't.
Until we don't. Until we mess it up. And then where do we have to turn? Jesus, I goofed up.
Yeah. And that forgiveness that he offers to us, that sanctification, and that's what makes the world go round. To be able to pick up the pieces and try again.
Michael made me proud, and again, I'm proud to be at this workbench, working with him. Maybe a different type of work than what it was originally designed for, but certainly just as real. It made me proud because he was able to forgive me for the way I presented the way his life was going to go. It's like, if you want to do this work, here is the plan. You go to Sunset, you go through Adventures and Missions, because you're 19 years old, and nobody's going to listen to you when you're 21.
They're still shocked by the fact that I'm so young.
Yeah.
15 years in, 20 years in.
Not only that, but you're not married. They're really not going to listen to you. You don't have kids. And it's like, look, if you go and you do this thing with AIM, and then afterwards you come back and you do the Sunset School of Preaching, and you become an AIM assistant, thank you. He can read my eyes, thank goodness. AIM assistant, you get a little bit more time, and when you are done, what did I say?
Get a job anywhere.
What did I say would happen? I said, if you go out and you're looking for a job and a church doesn't hire you, they're foolish for not hiring you. Because you did the work and you got the experience. You did your apprenticeship. And he made me proud.
Yep.
He's not the first one. Lord willing, he's not the last one. And I'm always here for anybody who does want to go and learn about Sunset or Bear Valley. Either one, they're both excellent schools. Mm-hmm. Sunset's better for the young guys. I'm going to admit that. Better for the younger ones. Bear Valley's better for the older ones, the ones that are more mature, the ones who are already married. What else did I tell you was going to happen? You're going to meet somebody.
Yeah, pretty girl, love the Lord.
Yeah. Did it happen?
The last time you heard me preach in person, I had brought Alyssa up to Satanta, and I had to preach an impromptu sermon, translated last minute, and the translator had me and Alyssa married by the end because I picked Proverbs 31. So,
yep.
Foreshadowing, I guess.
Thank you all for your time and your patience with us, and I hope this experiment that we have endeavored upon this day has been to your benefit.
Yeah. I think when we get to this, right, as we wrestle with this, and this is something we're going to continue to wrestle with, and this is something that we as a community continue to wrestle with, is how do we apply this, right? We seek to be like Jesus. That requires learning about him, growing about him, continuing to seek him out, and we do what we can, right? We do what's put before us, and we trust that God's going to work in and through us. Right? God put Ryan in my life to send me on this path, and he, was there with me every step of the way as I tried to figure out what to do, right? And then I'd call Ryan up on the phone when I was like, okay, I'm lost. right? And we try to work through the problem, and sometimes I followed his advice, and sometimes I didn't, and sometimes that was to my benefit, and sometimes that was not. But we trust God, right?
I would say that the thing to leave you all with today is nobody cares how much you know. Sorry. Nobody cares how much you know. What do they care about?
How much you care.
They care about how much you care.
You know, that genuineness.
Okay?
And it's only lived through a life that's open, you know, and caring about others. And you don't get there overnight, right? So it's time to get to the work.
I'll let you finish up.
It's time to, you know, make sure you have a space in your life that you can clear that off, that you have people in your life that you can call, that you can be engaged with, right? I mean, there's a reason me and Ryan spend hours on the phone, because, you know, there's great stories and rabbits to chase and concepts to flesh out. It doesn't fit neatly into a sermon, right? Even if we try, right? And we did try. But we have to get to the work. And it comes down to doing the work, and then you go back to somebody who's further ahead and say, okay, this is what went wrong. Now, how do I fix it? What did I do wrong? Like, I did my best and it didn't work out. And you try again, and you try again. So let's get to the work.